All right, I've already tested out the RTX 3060 on a Ryzen 5 5600X based PC, so you can check for that video if you want a lower end system. Now we're moving up to an RTX 3080, so still an older GPU, and I've still paired it with the Ryzen 5 5600X because I think that's a good vintage for this type of GPU. Those are popular stuff around the same time. Here we're at 1440p resolution. I'm gonna start out at DLSS quality, and then we'll either turn it off if we don't need it or make it more aggressive if we do need to. And I do have it set to ultra nightmare settings. Now, I do have the 12GB version of the 3080. Performance-wise, there's not a big difference between that and the original. But if we are noticing VRAM issues, we will potentially need to take a look at something there. Let's go ahead and actually start out in the second area of the game, the second mission, and then we'll look at some other missions as well, since they do have some differences in performance. Let's go ahead and turn off that. And here we go. All right, I've kicked on the average frame rate counter. Looks like we are currently at over 100 FPS. Now, if you notice screen tearing and motion judder and things like that, that is because I'm capturing at an unlocked frame rate on a 60 FPS capture card on a 60 FPS YouTube video. So it is very important to note that you should be looking at the frame time graph to judge the smoothness, although when I look at the frame time graph, I then miss my parries, so there's that. Anyway, the frame time graph is absolutely butter smooth in this game. So whatever you think about the performance of this game being, heavier to run than like Doom Eternal, for example, that's, I fell off the edge. I was staring at the frame time graph, guys. Whatever you think about this game being more difficult to run than Doom Eternal because of the ray tracing always being on and because of the larger environments, higher enemy counts, all of that, that is all true. However, the optimization when it comes to things like this game runs butter smooth, this has it all there. It is extremely flat frame time graph. This is not Unreal Engine 5 stutter struggle. So the id Tech engine and the id Tech game developers and all of that are really getting the job done when it comes to buttery smooth performance if you do have the hardware for it. So there is that. Now, it does look like this has actually been pretty great experience so far. Ultra nightmare settings, 1440p DLSS quality, and it's DLSS 4, so again, not the frame generation, we're on a 30 series card, so no DLSS frame gen support, but not really looking needed here. Like I said, it looks like we're around 100 FPS at these settings, but this is not the different missions can have different performance profiles. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the first section of the game, actually. I actually just loaded into the fifth. Never mind. We're gonna load into the first dragon fight situation. So this has a slightly different performance profile, but I'm actually curious if I'm going to be locked out here. When I was playing on my 5090 earlier off stream, I could not get these to parry. I just realized I was clicking the wrong button right now, but you're supposed to be able to parry the green ones by pressing spacebar. So when we get a green one, let's see if it works. Last night, this was not triggering properly for me, and I could actually not progress. So when you press spacebar, when the green ones hit, you are supposed to then overcharge your weapon and then be able to destroy these shields. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, guys, but my weapon just did not overcharge. And that means that I cannot actually progress. So the reason I have not made it further in this game for testing than this mission is because I'm either an idiot or this isn't overcharging my weapon. I've tried a few different things, different timings on it. I can try not firing my weapon while I do it, etc. But again, it has to be the green ones. But even when the green ones hit, I can try sooner, I can try later. It's not overcharging the weapon. So this seems to be a weird bug. So I will say that's the biggest issue I've ran into here. Anyway, there's your kind of performance in your dragon stuff, though. If I reset the frame rate counter, it's a little more demanding here maybe at times than the previous scene we were in, but nothing drastically different. Let's go back to the main menu again, and let's go ahead and take a look at the first section of the game. So in this first area of the game, I did notice performance areas that were a bit more demanding than what we saw in that Chapter 2 stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is the very intro section of the game. And so if you are buying the game and seeing how it tests out on your hardware, again, this is more demanding than at least the first several, like one of the more demanding sections of the first several missions, at least. Like I said, I would love to progress further than that dragon fight. But either I'm really dumb, in which case let me know in the comment section, or the game is glitching out and it will not let me parry those and overcharge my cannon, which means progression is blocked. And this is on a different PC than I was using previously when I was actually playing it. I was also trying it on a 5090 based system, all of that. So as you can see here, performance is a bit lower in this area. We're down more kind of in the 80s. Rather than closer to 100 FPS, but you know, it is what it is. Now, even dipping into the 70s there for a bit, I do want to go ahead and test out maybe a bit more in this section, since that seems to be the more demanding one, and see like, okay, what if we were not upscaling? So what if the upscaler was set to, well, you know what, let's go DLAA. So this is native resolution using DLAA for a high quality anti-aliasing technique, but it is not resolution scaling. So this is full native 1440p Ultra Nightmare settings, including the high-quality anti-aliasing from DLAA. And you can see that at these settings, we are dipping below 60 FPS. We are in the mid-50s here. So there is that. And why don't we go ahead and restart from the checkpoint so we get some enemies back on screen again. Do you notice how fast this game loads, though? Again, speaking of some of the optimizations of this engine, loading is just instantaneous, which is nice. This PC has an SSD, but it's an older one. Again, I'm playing this on a PC from this era. This is, you know, so 5-ish years old. Upper mid-range parts, you know, the 3080 was pretty high-end at the time, near top of the line. The 5600X based CPU, not crazy. You know, it's a PCIe Gen 3 SSD, nothing too crazy. I think it's kind of some off-brand, I actually forget exactly what it is. But yeah, we can see kind of mid-50s if we're not using upscaling. But it does look like Ultra Nightmare settings at 1440p, just with DLSS quality. And again, with DLSS 4 transformer upscaling, it looks pretty great. Let's go ahead and test out some other resolutions, though. So let's check out if we were playing on a 1080p display, if running at native Ultra Nightmare would be a realistic thing to do. So 1080p resolution, DLAA, so full native 1080p with high quality anti-aliasing on Ultra Nightmare settings. Let's restart map from the checkpoint again and take a little run through here. Reset the frame rate averaging. So 3080 is, at least in this little intro bit, getting us around 80 FPS. I think when we turn the corner here. By the way, another big thing they did here is the environments are way more destructible and way more physics going on. So again, that's one reason why I'm using the lower end CPU as well, is just to make sure that we can hit higher frame rates. If the GPU can hit them, make sure we're not getting bottlenecked on the CPU. So far, looking good here. The way to identify if we hit CPU limitations is if the GPU usage drops below the upper 90% range. Ideally, we'd just be around 99% GPU utilization, and that would indicate we are not running into CPU bottlenecks on the performance on the Ryzen 5 5600X. Yeah, so it looks like if you're on a 1080p display here, full native Ultra Nightmare with DLAA is perfectly playable in this kind of 70 to 90 FPS range. Looks like we're averaging 78. Now, I do want to check, though, for a couple of things. One is I do want to stress the CPU here, since we're on that Ryzen 5600X. So I'm going to go all the way down to DLSS performance mode at 1080p. Keep in mind, this is not in order to do a realistic thing for this GPU. This is more about stressing the CPU. This is an older 6-core CPU, although it is more powerful than what's in the consoles. Consoles are targeting 60 FPS and don't seem to be CPU limited there. But how high, you know, how much extra CPU budget did they leave in their frame time calculations? Notice we are now CPU limited. I want to make sure you guys see this. How can I tell we're CPU limited? The GPU usage has dropped. We are now CPU limited. So the Ryzen 5 5600X, at least in this scene, is capping out at around 100 FPS. We'll get some more enemies on screen up here. So let's go ahead and see what we get. yeah, GPU utilization down in the 80% range, indicating we are now even more CPU limited. And despite being CPU limited, okay, frame rates are under 100 FPS, but they're near it. So the CPU limitations on a Ryzen 5 5600X seem to be perfectly playable for a single-player game, and I would imagine there's probably some areas of the game that are going to go beyond this. But yeah, it does drop into the 70s even at times. So again, that looks to be the CPU limitations that I'm able to test out on this setup. Now, the next thing I want to look at, though, is what if we went to 4K resolution? And I think it's going to be reasonable to actually stay at DLSS performance now. So DLSS performance at 1080p, probably overkill, and we were CPU limited anyway. That didn't make a lot of sense. But 4K resolution, DLSS performance, with the newer DLSS 4 transformer model, can look pretty excellent. Ultra Nightmare settings, let's go ahead and see how this goes again if we restart from this same checkpoint. So we are now getting, looks like, around 60 FPS. Let me actually kick in the averages. If you look at the FPS numbers in the top left-hand side of the screen, the one to the left is the momentary frame rate. That's the frame rate right now. The one in the middle is an average since I clicked the Start Benchmark button, which I just reset at the beginning of this new settings change. And the one on the far right is the 1% lows. So here we can see that at Ultra Nightmare settings, DLSS performance mode upscaling, which is still looking pretty good, we are getting around 60 FPS in this area of the game, with 1% lows down in the lower 50s. So indicating that we, you're not going to be locked to 60 if you have like a V-Sync lock on your monitor, you don't have variable refresh rate or something like that. You will be dropping frames, but on a VRR display, this seems fine. So 3080 using DLSS performance does seem good for a 4K 60 display, which if you had a 4K monitor at the time was more common than the higher refresh rate 4K displays, although you might have been on a 4K 120 at this point as well. Interesting stuff. I would test out other settings other than the fact that really there's not a great increase to performance in this game by lowering settings. Like from Ultra Nightmare to high, there's almost no change. Going down to medium settings, you get a bit more performance. Low settings, you get a bit more again. And honestly, there's not a huge visual difference. That's just the shadow quality. Overall slider, we'll go to medium. Best practice here would be to restart the game, but then I'd have to open up my video editor and whatnot. And really, I've already off camera tried restarting the game, and there just isn't a massive increase to performance. So let's do this run through at medium settings DLSS performance on the 4K output, and just kind of get an idea of what that looks like. So if you did want to get a little more performance out of this, again, visually, there is not a massive difference here between Ultra Nightmare and medium. There are some differences. It is not huge. But again, there is not a huge performance difference either. Some games get you a lot more performance scaling from changing graphic settings. So that's where we're at here. You can see that our averages are closer to 70 right now, 69, nice. Which is a bit higher than we were seeing at the Ultra Nightmare settings, but like I said, not drastically so. By the way, VRAM-wise, while we are going beyond 8 gigabytes, there's no indication that we're going beyond 10. So I don't think if you had the 10 gigabyte card, you would be seeing a big difference here. By the way, just as a final thought, if you are thinking you're running into VRAM related issues in this game, especially if you're on an 8 gigabyte card, the most important setting here is the texture pool size. If you drag that down to like 1536 instead of the 2048 that it starts on, then that will get you a little more headroom on your VRAM situation. All right, guys, I think that's probably everything we need to see. So it looks like the RTX 3080 is capable of a good experience at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K in this game. Although keep in mind that at 1440p, you'd probably want to be using DLSS quality or even more aggressive. And at 4K, you likely want to be using DLSS performance and may consider going down to medium settings in order to stay above 60 FPS whereas Ultra Nightmare settings are gonna be dipping below 60 FPS at times. The Ryzen 5 5600X, we were able to reach CPU-limited performance in the 70 to 80 FPS region in this scene at least. Again, I can't progress further in the game right now because I'm either an idiot or the game is bugged. I hope all of you have an excellent day. I will be testing out other graphics cards in this game, so maybe let me know what you'd like to see on the channel down below, and I'll be thinking about what I want to test out. I'd like to do a series of videos on this. Have an excellent day.